Imagine a world where only a handful of humans existed. No cities, no kingdoms, no roads, just the beginning of humanity. But in this tiny world, something terrible would happen. According to ancient tradition, Adam and Eve began the first family. Their first two sons were Cain and Abel. Cain worked the land and grew crops. Abel cared for flocks of sheep. The brothers lived different lives, but both worked hard. One day, both brothers brought offerings, and that moment would change human history forever. Cain offered crops from the land, while Abel offered the best from his flock. According to the story, Abel's offering was accepted, but Cain's offering was not. And that's when jealousy began to grow inside him. Some believe this was the beginning of humanity's first great conflict. The more Cain thought about it, the angrier he became. The story says Cain was warned before he acted. He stood at a crossroads between self-control and anger. Abel had no reason to suspect what was coming. One day, Cain led Abel out into a lonely field. Then, something happened that would change human history forever. According to the story, Cain attacked his own brother. For the first time, one human had taken the life of another. The world's first murder had just taken place. Soon, Cain was asked a simple question. Where is your brother? Instead of telling the truth, Cain denied responsibility. Am I my brother's keeper? But the truth could not remain hidden. Cain would soon face the consequences of his actions. The punishment was exile. Cain would become a wanderer, but Cain was not destroyed. Instead, something unexpected happened. A mark was placed on him, not to punish him further, but to protect him. He feared that others would seek revenge. So Cain became the first wanderer in human story. He had no land, no home, no place to settle. Meanwhile, humanity slowly began to grow. Over time, people tried to understand what this story really meant. Some believe it reflects the conflict between farmers and shepherds. Others say it is really about jealousy and human emotion, because this story still speaks to us today. This story has been told for thousands of years, passed from generation to generation. But why do we still tell this story today? Because it reflects something deep about human nature. Anger does not appear suddenly. It grows slowly, quietly, until it becomes something dangerous. Every person reaches a moment of choice, control or destruction, and every choice has consequences. What would you have done in his place? Cain's life became one of complete isolation. He had no place where he truly belonged, and the weight of what he had done followed him everywhere. Meanwhile, life continued without him. Abel, however, became a symbol of innocence, and his story was never forgotten. Humanity began to reflect on its own nature. Why do humans harm each other? Perhaps this was the first lesson in human history, that actions have consequences that echo forever. This story continues to echo through time. From this point onward, human history is filled with both creation and conflict, two sides of human nature always present. Even thousands of years later, the same emotions remain. We still struggle with anger, jealousy, and pride, and the cycle continues in different forms. Perhaps this story was meant as a warning. The choice between destruction and control still exists, and it exists within every human being. So the real question is not about Cain. The real question is about us. What kind of beings have we become? Each person carries an inner struggle. Every action begins in a moment of thought, a moment where we choose who we will be. Cain becomes more than a person. He becomes a symbol, and Abel becomes a symbol of innocence. Both exist within human history and within every human mind. The story always leads us back to one truth. Our choices shape the world around us. Sometimes a single action changes everything. The consequences can travel far beyond what we imagine. Cain could never take back what had happened. Some actions stay with us forever. Perhaps that is why this story survived, not simply as history, but as a lesson. Every generation finds meaning in it. Though ancient, its message still feels familiar, because human nature has changed less than we think. When we look back at this ancient story, we see more than two brothers. We see a reflection of ourselves. Their emotions are still our emotions. Their choices remind us of our own. Every generation faces the same struggle. Anger still exists. Jealousy still exists. But so do kindness and compassion, and the choice remains ours. So, who was the first murderer? According to the biblical tradition, the answer is Cain. But history is often more complicated. Humans lived for countless generations before writing existed. The identity of the first real murderer may be
lost forever. Yet Cain's name survived, while countless others vanished. Not because it records a crime, but because it explores a timeless human struggle. The story was never only about Cain. In many ways, it is a story about all of humanity. For thousands of years, this ancient lesson has endured. It reminds us that the greatest battles often happen within. Every choice, no matter how small, has consequences. Those consequences can travel far beyond our sight. And that is why the story of Cain and Abel still survives. Not as a tale of the past, but as a reminder for the present. Because the real question was never who Cain was. The real question is what we choose to become. And that choice belongs to every one of us. But there is another question worth asking. Was Cain truly the first murderer in history? Humans existed long before written records. Most of their stories were never recorded. Countless lives disappeared from memory. Today, archaeologists search for answers. Some discoveries reveal signs of violence. These injuries date back thousands of years. The first real murderer may be impossible to identify. Their identity may be lost forever. Yet one name survived through the ages: Cain. Why did this particular story endure? Because it was never just about a crime. Over time, the story became a symbol. Stories can travel farther than people ever could. And sometimes, stories become mirrors. The emotions in this story still feel familiar. Jealousy still exists. Anger still exists. But kindness still exists as well. Every generation faces the same choice. The decision remains the same. Whether in ancient times or today, the human heart has changed less than we imagine. And so we return to Cain. Perhaps not the first murderer who ever lived, but the first murderer whose story changed history. His story became a warning carried through generations. Was Cain a real person or a powerful symbol? That answer may never be known.